Breaking news, President Trump says Israel and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire. Good afternoon, I'm Tram Mai.
And I'm Troy Hayden. The president posting on Truth Social saying, quote, "It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended." And this comes hours after Iran answered Saturday's airstrikes by the U.S. with an attack of its own, firing missiles at U.S. forces in Qatar. So this is video of those missiles being launched. No U.S. casualties were reported.
The Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar is occupied by thousands of Americans and serves as the headquarters of military air operations in the Middle East.
So we've reached out now to Luke Air Force Base. Of course, their mission is training fighter pilots, combat-ready airmen to see if they've added extra security measures because of what's going on in the Middle East. We were directed to an official government website that says, in part, quote, "Based on world events, additional security measures have been put into place at all military installations in the continental United States and Alaska."
Employees and visitors to military bases and posts should plan for increased security measures. The website also says, quote, "We are not aware of specific threats to installations." Let's go now to NBC's Monica Alba with the latest details from Washington.
Iran's retaliation is underway. Iranian armed forces saying it targeted the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar after the U.S. bombed 3 nuclear facilities over the weekend. U.S. officials say they had been notified of threats against U.S. forces on bases in Bahrain as well as other countries in the Middle East. President Trump meeting with his national security team in the Situation Room this afternoon. A senior administration official confirms the White House made a last-minute effort to avoid those weekend strikes. President Trump offered to send Vice President Vance and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to Turkey for talks. He was even willing to go himself. But Iran's supreme leader could not be reached to authorize a meeting, and the talks never happened. After Saturday's attack, the president had warned Iran about any retaliation.
Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
2 officials telling NBC News that before the weekend attacks, Iran had warned the president if the U.S. conducted airstrikes on Iran, it could potentially activate sleeper cells it claims to have in this country.
We do have to take seriously the threat that Iran has placed inside the United States, teams of people who could go after soft targets.
Today, we're getting a look at those targets in Iran. Isfahan Technology Center taking a direct hit. And Natanz, a crater remains where a bomb fell. But it's difficult to determine damage at the Fordo facility, buried deep underground. And it's unclear where Iran stored its enriched uranium and if it was hit, though the administration is confident it was.
We have a high degree of confidence that where those strikes took place is where Iran's enriched uranium was stored.
Iran turning to Russia for aid, the country's foreign minister meeting with Russian President Putin and saying Iran will coordinate its response with Russia. Qatar has condemned today's attack, calling it a violation of its sovereignty, and the president continues to monitor the situation closely. He's scheduled to depart for the NATO summit in the Netherlands tomorrow morning. Monica Alba, NBC News, the White House.
And joining us now to talk about these latest developments is Daniel Rothenberg, a professor of practice with the School of Politics and Global Studies over at ASU, and also the co-director of the Center on the Future of War. Daniel, thanks so much for being with us. You know, we went from retaliatory airstrikes to now a ceasefire. It seems like Iran isn't really a country to surrender easily. So what do you predict will happen?
Well, it's not easy to predict things in the Middle East or really anywhere. But one thing that we're seeing now, let's hope we don't see an escalation. We might think back to the 2020 assassination of Qasem Soleimani in Iraq during the first Trump administration, which was followed by Iranian attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq, but it didn't lead to escalation. And maybe we'll be fortunate enough to see here something somewhat similar.
You know, I feel like we've been hearing for the last decade that Iran is this close to getting a nuclear weapon. Why is it so difficult for us to know where they are with their nuclear program?
That's a great point. We have been hearing that. We keep hearing that there's 2 weeks or a month or whatever. We don't know the full story, and to really know what's going on, we need inspectors on the ground. But it may be true, as some experts claim, that Iran is close to being able to create a nuclear weapon and has decided not to do so for a variety of reasons. We also don't know right now if they've hidden away the enriched uranium or even centrifuges and centrifuge materials. So none of this gives us a clear idea of how far Iran is even today from creating a nuclear weapon.
In your opinion, I mean, in light of obviously Iran escalating its nuclear arsenal, do you think this attack was necessary?
That's a good question. I mean, it's difficult to know whether it was necessary, but it happened. So the hope now is that we can come up with a way to avoid a serious escalation of the conflict. Because if that were to happen, one could imagine a whole series of scenarios that would be devastating for the region, for the world, and even for us here in Arizona.
Is it overly optimistic to think that things may quiet down in the Middle East? I mean, we're talking about a 2,000-year-old conflict, right, Professor? I mean, is this just another little cog in that wheel?
Well, I'm not sure the current conflict should be looked at through thousands of years of history, but it's unlikely we're going to see a sort of a calm Middle East. But let's hope that we will see a calming of this situation, because it's a pretty big deal for the U.S. to have directly attacked Iran on its sovereign territory. And if there's a way for this to calm down and for there to be sort of cooler heads who take over, then that's a much better outcome than something more aggressive and the expansion of greater conflict.
Daniel, there's been talk of sleeper cells back here stateside. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, how concerned should we be?
Well, let's very much hope that there are no Iranian organized attacks here on American soil. Were that to happen, we all remember 9/11, and it's really difficult to see how this situation could be kept in a calmer fashion if there were to be that sort of attack. So let's just hope that that does not happen.
Agreed. All right, Professor, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.